Save the Semantics, episode 67. It is March 30th, 2019. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I cough into the mic and I talk about my opinions, which don't really matter all that much. This is just kind of a sort of like an audio journal, in a sense, of things that currently interest me and whatnot. It's a beautiful day here in the town that I live in. I'm always I'm curious as to how I should how much. I always talk about this, but I'm always curious as to how much information I should give about myself without doxing myself, right? I'm always paranoid about that, right? If I had a much more significant number of listeners or followers or whatnot, then I'd be much more. No, I would still be just as privy about my own security and whatnot, But I mean, it just doesn't I don't know. I'm just paranoid as to maybe there's someone out there that's ooh, I kind of want to know who this fucker is, He said something controversial in a past episode, I'm gonna find him, I'm gonna track him down, and I'm gonna locate him. I'm gonna call him out on his bullshit and whatnot, So I don't know. There's always something. There's always some crazy people out there, But anyway, yeah, beautiful day today. So I decided to just come out here and do a recording, Get some thoughts out of my head, whatever those may be. If I'd have any thoughts at all at the moment, I don't know. Maybe it just sort of felt like coming out here and doing a recording. It's Saturday today, right? Saturday, yeah. So I got 2 more days. I got today, tomorrow, and then I'm going back on the grind, as they say. Back on the academic and work schedule. So that's gonna be fun. I don't mind though. I need some productive to do. It's been a slow week. It's been a good slow week. I need some time off, before I completely go headfirst into chaos. But I honestly do, and again, I've mentioned this before, but I do prefer having just something to do, as opposed to nothing to do. And that's something that I've thought about. It's just sort of once the idea of just being bored, I think it was Thursday where I was so bored out of my goddamn mind. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, right? I could just sit there, I could play games, or I could just video games and whatnot. I can't now I'm just remembering how bored I was when I was in elementary summer. Goddamn, I just had nothing. I'm just thinking about what I did during those summers. Summers were so much longer, and what did I do? I hung out with friends sometimes, right? But they were doing vacations and whatnot, and sometimes I was just kind of stuck here, like I am now, right? And I could do something, I could plan something, but it's just there's just not enough time to do any of those things at the moment, I just can't think of there's just not enough time. I have a weekend and I'm busy tomorrow, so there's just not really necessarily anything to do in a sense, but I'm just thinking about how I am of course there's the nostalgia of looking back on your childhood, but I think that's one thing that I won't miss being a kid. I like having some kinds of responsibilities, where it's not to a point of being overburdened by any means, but I like having, I like being able to know that I was productive, or I was, I kept myself busy to an extent. I have some obligations to fulfill and whatnot, it's there's just such a lack of responsibility back then. You just didn't have to worry about stuff. And of course that was, that's just what being a kid was like, and I'm grateful that I was able to enjoy my time, enjoy my childhood, but that's definitely one thing where what I'm not gonna miss is just not being like having to worry about anything. There's just such a carefree attitude about everything. But also extreme boredom. It's just when there's no school. There's no real you know anticipation for looking forward to things, right? And when I was younger, when I was like much younger, like I honestly was like looking forward to going back to school because like I could, see all of my friends and stuff. But as I grew older, like I started to get more jaded with like academics and whatnot. So I look forward to summer to an extent. But like yeah, but when I was younger, I actually didn't like summer that much because like I just felt like there was just nothing really to do. Like I could keep just doing the same shit all the time, but like it's just you just get bored. It's just boredom is a killer. I kind of had like a weird kind of sort of not even like kind of like an existential crisis. Like this week, I was just sort of thinking about it. I was just like stewing in my own like boredom, just thinking about like things I could potentially do, creative venues and stuff like that. And I just couldn't really come up with anything, and that sort of, in a way, kind of like terrified me. This sounds so melodramatic, and I'm trying not to make it melodramatic, but yeah, boredom is like a killer. I feel like when you're a kid, it's like whatever, it's fine being bored, but when you're like an adult, you're like I just like I'm still like a young adult, but like what I'm saying is that like you just kind of feel fed up with it, like I don't know, like it was just like a kind of like a weird moment for me, I guess. And then just kind of looking back on me being a kid and whatnot, it's just like I think it's just maybe because I've already experienced this feeling before, and I was like, I don't want to feel this way again. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't like being bored, I like having the notion, the idea or the notion that I have some things to do. This is the time that I have for myself, right? But the thing is, I already spend a lot of time with myself, and so when I have so much of that time, like I feel like I just kind of lose sense of time and lose sense of self and whatnot. I don't know. It's really not as like it's not a crisis, right? It's just it's a very it's an interesting thing to think about. I feel like I in a sense like I definitely can appreciate that I can even feel bored in a sense, right? I think a lot of people don't even have that privilege of being able to have that feeling of like, wow, there's like nothing to do right now. And some people, there's just something just constantly happening in their lives where they have to provide and they have to work and survive. So there can never be that feeling of like just nothing. Where you just have almost total freedom in a sense, right? And so I mean, in a way, like I'm bitching about like nothing in a way, but it's just it's a weird thing to think about, where you just kind of left to your own devices and you just kind of are sort of sitting in your own like in your own like I don't know, lack of creativity in a sense, right? It's just it is what it is. It's interesting, it's kind of like a weird moment of self-reflection that I had there, but yeah, I just think, going back to what I was saying, like, I think that's one of the things that I definitely won't miss is just being, when being a kid, you're just kind of, you don't have these kinds of responsibilities, right? And I'm probably going to take that for granted once I do have these much more adult responsibilities that come upon me when I'm just like going to have to deal with, just all the other things that I just, I'm just taking for granted, but, yeah, that's just sort of something that I was thinking about earlier this week before I go back to school, I guess, right? Just something I had on my mind, and also I think like It's I think it's just like eventually I can't. It's hard for me to like when I try to fill that time up. Like I just don't have. There's just some things I just don't have interest in. Like Netflix. Like I don't know. It's just too much time to like commit to a new TV show, even though I could watch that over a period of time, but I feel like it takes too much commitment and whatnot. I just finished like a TV show, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to start up another TV show again. It's just I don't know. That's just another thing that I had going on. I watched Us earlier this. Actually, was it yesterday? No, I watched it Thursday night. Was it Thursday night? What day is it today? Today's Saturday. 2 days ago. Yeah, I watched Us earlier this week, and it was pretty good. I don't want to spoil anything, but definitely an interesting horror movie. I don't know how like it's a pretty original idea for the most part. I think of course, it borrows some like bodies, not really Body Snatcher, but like the Double. What that movie kind of reminded me of was like another movie. This is not like they're very different movies, but it was also kind of like this one's much more physical violence, horror kind of thing, slasher horror. It reminded me of like Enemy. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast before, but Enemy is another movie where it deals with like doubles. It deals with two like doppelganger kind of thing, right? If it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, and I forgot he works as a professor at a university, and then he just encounters an actor or like an extra in a movie who looks exactly like him, and then he discovers more about this person. There's kind of like that. There's sort of that suspense there, so that's kind of what it reminded me of a little bit. But there are two different types of movies. The Enemy is much more psychological. This one is a little more. I mean, it is psychological to a sense too, but it's more. I don't know how to describe it. It's more. It's a more broad kind of idea as opposed to like a singular kind of character study, I guess. Even though this movie, Us, did this sort of the same thing. But I've never really been that big of like a horror like movie fan. I think just like the way in which like Jordan Peele presents these horror themes make it a lot more intriguing, a lot more interesting, and I think more just more captivating for like a wider audience too. Because I don't know, just there's just so many horror movies are just so cliched, where they're just very, every horror, like all these horror movies, a bunch of horror movies follow like the same format. There's like a devil in the basement or whatnot, and I did see like a pretty solid one earlier like this year, where it was like a Taiwanese, I think it was Indonesian horror movie of like, there's like a devil, there's like a curse in the household and whatnot, and that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. But that isn't to say that idea hasn't been played out, just like scares and whatnot. The setting is always this creepy house or creepy cabin or whatever, you're just kind of sick of that. It's cheap to make, I get it, because it doesn't involve such a heavy, it involves like a pretty easy set to make or something. I don't know how movies are made. I don't know I don't know how that shit works, but I'm assuming it's easy because it's just one singular location. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay that much of like high paying actors to really be in those types of movies and whatnot. There's always there's always some kind of possession and whatnot in those movies, and it's just not. Once it's been done like hundreds and hundreds of times, you're like, okay, you get it. It's just not like, maybe it's scary to an extent by how the monster or how like the creature is revealed, that can be kind of intriguing, but it's just not a novel. It's not a very novel idea or concept, and Jordan Peele has sort of created these two couple of movies where they're pretty unique, they're pretty interesting, they bring into question a lot of like societal ideas, racism, classism, and whatnot. So I think that's why they've been doing so successfully, because they've just been such a different, they're just it's a breath of fresh air. That's what I'm saying, and it's maybe hopefully some other filmmakers can follow suit and create their own kinds of like different types of like horror movies, and I've just maybe this is my kind of venture into that genre, where maybe there's some other films that kind of interest me, and I know there's like all these other horror movies like It Follows and stuff like that, but I don't know, it just doesn't really, those movies don't really interest me that much. Like, I think they still sort of follow the idea of like, I don't know, it just doesn't really interest me all that much, I think, and it's just not so super enjoyable, really. I don't know, I've just never been that big of a horror fan, but I think lately especially with Jordan Peele's films, maybe they've just kind of interested me a little more. So maybe that's something, maybe I'm willing to take a deep dive into those types of movies, right? Similar to how I've done it with like, these Korean thrillers and whatnot, as of recently. So I don't know, maybe just a different taste, I guess, if you will. I'm trying to open up my phone to check the time. Okay, we still got a decent amount of time left. I was trying to connect with a coworker on Facebook, and it's been maybe a year since I've opened up Facebook, and I just realized like how there's just so much nothing on Facebook. I know a lot of people say this, but for my own personal account, like, it just doesn't have any value at all. Like, I think the only real value it has is like me being able to connect with people that I haven't talked to in a while, or maybe I connect with them so I can hopefully talk to them in the future, right? Maybe just keep up like sort of a connection in a way, right? But there's just scrolling through the feed, it's just nothing, right? It's a cheaper Twitter in a way, if that makes any sense, right? I based on my very, very limited knowledge of Twitter, Facebook, you can express your opinion, or you can like, what is it? You can express your opinion, or like maybe share like a meme or whatever, but it's just so it's just so much aggregated shit, and with all the ads and whatnot, like, I just don't know how long it's really gonna last, right? But it's still like kind of like the number one way to connect with people, which is why I still use it, mostly just for messenger, messaging to people, keeping in touch, but it's just there's just so, I don't know, there's just too, I think it's also, it's just too much to as well, right? It's just not like a single thing. Like Twitter, you have, you can, of course there's like sharing links and whatnot, but like I think it works better to an extent, maybe just because I think the format of it is better. I think it's just a little better. It's more simple, Facebook, there's just all this other bullshit. There's groups, there's all, event planning and all this other shit that nobody cares about. You can just use that. You can, plan an event on your own, right? Like, you don't need to use Facebook to do that. So, I don't know. I just took one look at it. I'm just like, I'm glad that I don't use this, or I don't even look at it. I just can't. I just don't know what kind of people. I guess older people, right? Just trying to get an understanding of like how people's lives are going and whatnot. I think this is so much more of a prevalent thing back when Facebook was at its peak, right? Maybe like 2012-ish. I don't know how big Facebook was, but like back then, where it felt like more like everyone was using it, and now it just doesn't feel like that at all. More now it's just kind of becoming like the the MySpace, where it's just older. Like an older generation of people kind of use it, and it's just it's just not it's just not cool anymore, all right? People have moved on, grandma. It's from it now. Everyone's using Instagram, right? I don't know. Instagram is just it's just a simple. It's a simple. Twitter and Instagram work in a sense because they're simplified ideas that kind of both. You could do the same things on Facebook as what you can do on Instagram and Twitter, but those are specific to, Instagram pictures, easy, right? And memes now. And Twitter, opinions and memes, right? Facebook is just all this other shit, right? And like, no, it's an update, relationship status or like living status or who gives a fuck, like, and then there's like the parents or like the family members are all in on it. Like, I mean, it's nice because like, you can update family members about how things are going and whatnot, but I don't use that, and I have no idea what family members of mine use Facebook or even social media for that matter. I don't know, maybe extended family that I don't really know of that well. Maybe that's entirely possible, So I don't know. I'm bitching about just some vapid thing, I'm still bitching about Facebook since I was in high school, which is crazy. It really doesn't matter, I just thought it was funny to think about. Anyways, that's probably gonna do it for today. Yeah, that's gonna do it for today. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.